Well, welcome everybody, and welcome more specifically, Joe. It's been a long time.
It's been a while. Look.
Hey, I already picked that up, Joe. The first thing I was going to say, the first thing I was going to say, I saw that logo at the top, and I said, "Look at that, the 1999 original edition."
Sign number 12.
Wow, beautiful bit of history, isn't it? When you do
Yeah.
those things, you're never sure how meaningful it's going to be. But when you see what that's 27 years later, and you see the original copy in your hand, and it's been read more than once, it's a beautiful sight. And I appreciate that, Joe.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
I was thinking about our call. I was thinking about all of the things I have. I went from VHS to DVDs to video on demand. And each time I bought it again because it was so important to me. Like I still have the videos, all of the original stuff, all of the original books, and I have the new versions as well that you have put out. Like pretty much every time you put something out, it's just like it has to be in the library. And I recognize it in the industry because I was there from the beginning. Like I see
Mhm.
so many things in the industry, and I remember the players with you who were like, "Yeah, that guy doesn't know what the hell he's talking about. Getting them out of here." And now they have programs based on a lot of the things that they called you the Antichrist for.
That's that's the way of truth. So it doesn't it's rejected and vilified, and then accepted as it's always been. That's one of my favorite quotes.
Yeah,
So no, that's
yeah.
why I appreciate it, Joe, and that's why I'm having the chat because you've been around long enough to know, to understand the history.
Hmm.
And anybody who was here before the turn of the century, anybody who was actively involved in the industry, for their own training or as a coach, and was studying what was around in the 90s, and we'll go back through your history and get it right. But anybody pre-2000 has a very different perspective, which is why I do my best to help other people understand history, not because I need them to be a historian, but if you understand where we came from, you can understand, well, was that incarnation really needed? Like, was it relevant, or was it just like a part of human desire to be bigger and better than it was before? Like, did we really need to do that? But if it ain't broke, you don't fix it, sort of thing. And
Right.
generally speaking, so I only innovated when I felt that there was something really missing that was holding the athlete back.
Hmm.
But post my innovations, I think I was probably the first one to roll out innovations because things hadn't changed a lot for a while, going back to um, Bill Pearl's Keys to the Universe, and in full respect to Bill, a lot of respect for Bill, the late Bill Pearl. But things hadn't changed too much, and when I came along and made quite a few changes, it triggered off a series of, well, geez, I want to look like I'm an innovator too. And so innovations were created for innovation's sake. And I just want to make it clear that's not how it started for me. And that's not how it is for me. I only did it out of necessity. But anyway, enough about me.
Yeah.
So, Joe, let's go back a little bit. Now, I
Yeah.
know you and I both appreciate privacy, so I'm not going to raise aspects of where you've been, where you've done, unless you want to. But I think there's one aspect of who that you are proud of, and we can start there. Is that you're a former U.S. Marine Corps member?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely, that's one of
Absolutely.
the first things I picked up about you.
Yes, yes. Former U.S. Marine and once a Marine, almost Marine, and then went straight into law enforcement. I'm currently the assistant chief and I'm a SWAT team commander. I've been doing that. Like when we met, I was just a police officer and I worked through the ranks on SWAT. And I sought you out for two reasons. One, I had an injury, and the other reason is I'm real big on when somebody puts out some work that I see that looks like it's good, I want to know where they learned from.
Good.
So, Polican, our friend, we've had many many conversations about him. In his credits, he had listed this guy named Ian King. So I looked up Ian King and I found a website. Didn't have a whole lot on it, but it led me to you, and we talked on the phone, which I thought was like, this guy just called me out of the blue. I'm like, that's super cool. And I bought this book, and then I remembered you totally messed me up because I thought at the time I was a little knowledgeable. Like I read a lot, and then I try to apply it for myself. But then when I got the book, it's just like you messed me all up because there was no book that I seen at the time that was so clear on how to put everything together and the why behind it. The why was really important because everybody did three sets of 10 or the five by five, but they were just randomly throwing shit on the wall, excuse my French, and hoping it would stick. But you had a method and a process. and more wasn't better. Better was better. And then from that point on, I remember our next conversation. You asked me about the book, and I told you the same thing I'm saying now. Like, you messed me all up, bro. And then I went on to the, hey, you got more stuff, and you said, oh yeah, I got coaching videos, and then you created a plan just for me, the Joey Buy Everything plan, and every single thing you produced, we had a payment plan, and each month. Your wife would send me a package with something that she would pick, and I remember the little Australian candies. She'd put
Yeah.
an Australian candy in it and until I got everything. And then we did some coaching. You even wrote programs for me when I was injured. So I remember all of that and it was just mind blowing. And I'm just like, why have I not seen this before? Because I knew all of the organizations, American College of Sports Medicine, National Strength and Conditioning Association, you name it, International Sports Journal and Nutrition. I was there, but none of this was covered to the depth that it was at the time. So I'm just like, okay, this guy's on to something. And that was just a paradigm shift for me. And I think the biggest thing you taught me that I'm so grateful for, which is why I'm here today, is it's not the barbells and bullshit, but it's the you don't have to take the words of the experts. You can find stuff for yourself, and your data is your data. Because when I first started, I think we talked about this early on. It's like I would read the studies, I would try to replicate it, and I couldn't. And then I thought that was something wrong with me, but I was able to make adjustments and make achievements, but I still like undermine that because it's just like, yeah, I'm still doing something wrong because the smart people are saying
Mm,
this is how it is, and I'm unable to do it. So there must be something wrong with me. And I would go back and try to put the square peg in the circle because the smart
mm,
people said something. And I got that from you. And I remembered after working with you, I'm just like, yeah, you know what? That may work for them, and that may just be bullshit because they're just trying to sell something. But I have real-time data in front of me on what I'm
mm,
seeing, and then I will not ignore that and keep building on that. Like I don't have to follow what the current guru or the current cool kid is to make progress. I'm able to do it on my own with my own thought process from the tools that you put out there for me. And now I recognize it. I recognize bullshit, and like I could name off the top of my head so many courses that include things that you were doing way before anybody wrote something about it. And now it's a course, it's a
mm,
specialty course. And I think that's why history matters because
mm,
I won't say everybody is a bullshitter. I think maybe some people really are trying to help, but I
mm,
will say there are lots of people that just try to profit off of novelty. And when they use some of the things that I believe you may have started with, they don't do it correctly, like our friend Allen, right? I remember reading one of his workouts for legs, and I'm like, that's not right. That puts you in a bad position. That's gonna hurt you. Ian would never do that. But I understood based on history. So that's why I think history is so important that you know where things come from because intent matters. How you do things, right? We can do the same exercise, but if
mhm,
the intent is different, we will get a
mhm,
different result. And that's why
mhm.
history is so important. But that's why I wanted to check in, see how you were doing. And we covered all this history together. And I see all these things now. I'm just like, yeah, Ian started that. Yeah, he did this. Oh, this is the guy who told all his people not to come. Like our friend on the East Coast
Yes.
actually is into foam rolling and stretching now. He's just like, yeah, I've had a paradigm shift. Like we should do foam rolling and stretching. And I'm just sitting here like, deuces, man. I
Yeah.
remember how hateful you were when that was said. Like, I mean, you swear you were the Antichrist, and now he's all over it. And I actually, where I work, they gave me a course that's one of his that's over $1,000, and I refused. I'm just like,
Good
I just
man.
can't do it. And I said, it's one of those things where I would throw the baby out with the bathwater. Even if there's some good things in there, I still wouldn't do it because I know I don't think that person was a good person. Because,
Yeah.
I think it was disingenuous to not have collective disagreements. Like we can disagree on things respectfully and say, hey, look, I'm
Absolutely.
able to find this and do this thing. and I'm successful with it, and you're doing it differently, and you're successful. So it doesn't mean that neither one of us are wrong or neither one of us are right. It's
Absolutely.
situational awareness. But anyway, yeah, I
Yeah,
said
so
a lot.
I sat in the athletes auditorium at the Denver Broncos. Yeah, the Denver Broncos. Al Miller, Denver Broncos, and Al Miller was real kind to me. And he gave me basically a lecture, a 2 hour lecture on how he put together strength training. And like people who are willing to share their experiences with you are really valuable. And you can take what you want and leave what you want. But I'll forever respect people who are honest, transparent, and want to help you. And then, I go out and give a seminar in Boston around 2000, and they pull out two-thirds of the audience and then write letters to the host that makes the host cry and intimidate and like threatening. Like it's just bullshit. Well,
Yeah.
why? Because at the time, the dominant paradigm in North America was let's lift heavy.
Mhm.
Don't worry about technique, and you only need 3 or 4 exercises. And I'd just come out and said, well, I actually believe bodyweight exercise. I know it's really weird because the post 2000 won't believe this, but bodyweight exercises were not done in American strength and conditioning. I mean, I'm not saying I invented bodyweight exercises, but they were not part
Right.
of the program. And so
Right.
when I said shit like that, I called it, and I came up with this before Donald used a similar saying, but I said, it's the local guru threatened syndrome. When you go into an area and you say something that the local guru is not doing, it gets pretty unpleasant for you.
Hmm.
And then it's even worse when you see a few years later they package it up and like that first book on functional training, really? Like really? You suddenly think it's okay because you realize you can make a buck and become a hero out of it. So
Hmm.
yeah, you and I probably have the same moral compass that I don't care what you think. I don't care how you train. Like if you know something I don't, I'm going to learn from you. If you can beat me, beat me. That's great. That's how I learn my shit because the scoreboard's going to be maybe be judged. It's not going to be whether an association likes me or whether a manufacturer likes me. It's whether the scoreboard's going to say what's best for that person. But to come out and do that, the
Yeah.
carry-ons that have gone on, I don't forget them, and I know you don't. But I never had a desire to run the world. I never had a desire to be an influencer per se. I just wanted to help athletes. I came up with some conclusions after 20 years, the first 20 years, and I shared those conclusions. And it was the timing in America, the internet came along, and blah blah blah. But so the reason you and I are still good is because you were looking for the same thing I was looking for. You're looking for the like I need to solve problems. Like I've got an injury, or I've got someone who's got an injury. I want to fix this injury, or I want to get a better result. I want to be world champion. I want to go to the Olympics. And that's the driving factor. It's not whether, they're not, it's nothing else. It's just,
Hmm.
I want to help you. I want to help them. So, and, we align because I think on that similar value, and I've valued that support over the years. And it's one of the reasons, as you said, we're talking is that because you now have the full legacy trilogy,
Hmm.
which is me saying, hey, listen, I can't put it all in here, but here's 423 theories that I built over the last 45 years. And the only way they're going to make this book is I've got to set them multiple times. They've got to be original. They've got to be genuinely my conclusions. Um, and you're one of the such a small sector of the population with that book. But if you have that book, even if you came into the industry post 2000, there's a chance that you can see, that's where that came from. That's where that came from. So I just wanted to say thanks for having the trilogy book series too.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you made it. Like I look and I often because I have all of the older ones, and it's interesting to see when I see things and there's no reference and like people just don't know. Like I think one of the things that I remember the most was probably tempos. I still see tempos just brutalized. People have no idea how to use them and why they're doing it. They just put random tempos in there, and it's clear to me because they don't know. Again, I think that's why, like for me in the military, history mattered because we don't
Hmm.
want to repeat that. So
Hmm.
having that in fitness is equally important, if not more, because I've learned that if you understand how something or where something came from, you know its appropriateness. Like when you see like I think it was maybe National Academy of Sports Medicine, one of their premier programs had walking lunges with something like a 4-4-4 tempo. And all I can think of is they clearly have absolutely no idea how to use tempo. Like I've never seen something like that. And this is a workout that's supposed to be done in an hour, and they had like 3 or 4 sets of 12 to 15 reps per
Killing
leg.
me,
And I'm
killing
just
me,
like,
Joe.
basic math.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
there's no way possible. But again, it was history matters. They didn't know how to use, like, even our late friend Polican, when he used it, like, he was at least better than some of the other people, but still, like, he still had some quirkiness where he wasn't using it the best that well. But I'm glad he did, because I was able to find you. And I think the other thing I like was one thing that you imparted in me was do no harm. And even though
Mm.
we say it for all of the certifications, do no harm, you took that shit serious. And that has been my MO over here. Like, when I train people, anytime somebody's broken, they come to me. It doesn't matter what it is, and it's baffling to me. Like, hey, didn't you see a physical therapist? Like, yeah. And I said, I'm not a physical therapist. I just do exercise. So I want to try to get you from not being able to do the thing that you can't do and not be in pain.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say 99% of the time, I'm spot on, and all I'm doing is exercise, do
Yeah.
no harm. And, and like my squat, one of the things I learned was I'm actually pulling back more than I'm pushing. Because again, we talk about like assessments, right? Like, as soon as they walk in, I'm assessing in real time. I'm looking at them like, oh, those guys are beat up. They had a call out last night. The last thing they need from me as their trainer coach is to beat the bejesus out of them. So we'll call an audible and we'll make some adjustments. This may be a flexibility day, and we can do some really good work on helping them make further progress down the road and not lose any ground, because they know now that flexibility work is not as easy as you think if
Yeah.
you're committed to it. It's
So
not you know,
you've raised so many points now. The last one about the process versus a prescription. If I hear someone use the word prescription, I get very scared because training is like this. They turn up and you got a plan and you look at them and you know the plan's not appropriate. Bang, it's changed. Simple as
mhm,
that. And we don't do that. And we can't predict the future. We can only take a guess at it. If we don't modify it on a daily basis, we're gonna go. It's gonna go pear shaped. Simple as that. And I'm watching
yeah,
athletes all around the world with no direct relationship to them in some instances, and I'm saying they were at the top of the game. If they don't get this message, they're not going to win the championship. And we've got a situation happening in an American high profile sport at the moment where I'm really concerned. It's as simple as this dogma. This is my program. I've got to stick to the program. No, it's a process, and that's one of the many
right.
Eastern European teachings that I picked up that is probably not being bought into, let's say, in the Western world, because the prescription attitude is still there. The process word hasn't really had a win, and that's the battle for me between the American strength and conditioning approach and the European physical preparation approach, which I do spend a bit of time. I think it was in volume one, and at least if not volume three as well, but definitely in volume one of the Legacy book, I talk about that. But coming back to tempos, you were there. You were there when nobody knew what a tempo was. And I
Mhm.
know the day that Polican walked into my training facility in '88 and he saw it for the first time, like, what the fuck? Um,
Yeah.
and, referenced it the first time. But it changed the world after it was accepted. I know T-Mag used to be a bit apologetic about it. This is Ian's little toy. It's a bit weird, but give it a go, sort of thing. But you're right. I mean, even the so-called Australian originated F45, which I think it may have gone into administration, they used the three-digit tempo as part of their corporate plan. Like the referencing is non-existent because too many people have said
Mhm.
it's mine. The old saying that failure is an orphan, but success is has many fathers. Everybody said, "Oh, I created that. I created that." Well, I gave it
Mhm.
the full history in my first 98, 99 book. So this is a history. I learned this from this person. I learned this from this person. Like this person mentioned it. This person mentioned something else, and I put it together, and this is my system. And young Charles, God bless him, wanted to add a fourth digit to look like it was individualized, but to, added credibility. But if you want to complicate it further, be my guest. But I don't see too much of my work being done well because it's not being taught by me. No one's saying, "Hey, this is Ian's work. Go back to the source." They're all saying, "I came to this conclusion from my perspective." Anyway, I won't bore you. History doesn't change in that regard. So yes, you having seen the evolution of this, and I think that was a pretty seminal history in physical preparation, especially for the Americans, with the
Mhm.
internet coming up, and a few other things happening, and there are other economic cycles that impacted. But when I released my thoughts into the American market through the internet and through in books in the late '90s, it certainly changed. It was like letting off like a flashbang, if not a grenade in the room. It was pretty disruptive.
Yeah, yeah, no, I remember the Get Buff series, the leg workouts with no weights. And I remember so many people just shaking their heads at it, like blah blah blah. I said, but have you tried it? Have
Yes.
you tried it? And I remember the guys just trembling and crawling out of the gym. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. The heaviest thing I saw you use today was like a 10-pound dumbbell. What's going on? You know? Having an understanding of I mean like things like the King deadlift, having an understanding of technique. Because I remember your early books, I remember asking you, hey, are there any pictures?
Yeah.
And the thing that I liked was you made somebody really, really think on how this had to be done because it was just words. All of your books was just words, not
Yeah.
not a single picture until the Book of Muscle, which was I remember you wasn't too keen on that one, but outside of that, there were no pictures, and I would say I probably did your exercises better than everybody I've seen, and that was before I got all your videos, and then once I got all the videos. I was spot on just from the description you gave, which I thought was really good. I was able to conceptualize it and then sit there and just think about it and then do it. And when I saw the videos, I'm like, oh, I got that right. But I thought
See,
that was really good and really interesting.
that's one of the challenges I've
Yeah.
had because how do you communicate how to do something properly? And it's such a challenge. And I'll give you a picture that's really gone pear-shaped. When Men's Health did an independent photo shoot of my single leg, stiff-legged deadlift, and that was one of my originals. But they had the,
Hmm.
the model throwing his leg up the back. And from that point on, this is, I don't know, 2003 or 2005, somewhere in that era. And it was for a
Yeah.
bloke who published it as his own exercise, by the way, who learned it directly from me. But anyway, um, from that moment on, everywhere I go around the gym, I'm like being in a Californian or oil rig camp with the big arm swinging up the back. It's like it's not really an exercise; it's a balance. I
Right.
mean, it's an exercise, but it's not exactly what I had in mind. And I was just static shock. I have athletes go to America, train in American colleges, come back to me and say, look at my exercise here. And I say, really? Where'd that come from? Oh, I learned it in America. How do you do it? Okay. And like I've got to go through the painful experience. Well, that's not exactly what I had in mind. And try it this way.
Right.
It's tough for me considering the road, but that's the way it is with interpretation, and that's
Yeah.
not changed. And particularly control drills. Control drills are even harder to teach someone how I want them done. And like we're just seeing it over and over again. When people get past that criticism and rejection and then imitate and claim it, but then they still teach it. Like, why even do it if you're not going to do it in the manner intended? But that's my personal bias as somewhat of that's my baby. Don't destroy my baby.
Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I agree. I don't think I've seen, I think early on, I saw people try the control drills, and then I think they felt they didn't get nothing from it. And I agree with them. They didn't get anything from it because they weren't doing it
Mm,
right. Like I learned
exactly.
mine from you, and I knew how to do them. Like I knew what the intent was and what I was supposed to be feeling and not feeling. And when I would watch people, like I remember that article, by the way, and I'm like, that's not how he does that shit. That leg should not be swinging. That leg is about an inch above the ground. It's not
Thank
touching
you.
the other leg. And that's a hip. Yeah, no. So, and that's one of the things. And again, like we said early on, that's why history is so important, is because if you knew the intent, you would know that you lost almost the whole exercise once that leg swung
Mhm.
back. Like it is, you're no longer feeling what you're supposed to be feeling. If you did it right, you probably wouldn't even be able to do nowhere near close the amount of reps that you're going to do swinging your leg back like that. Intent matters. Yeah.
And that's why it's pretty clear in my teachings. I'd rather, if you can't do the full range, just work at the range. Don't do just progress. Have an endpoint. Work towards an endpoint. Don't say, well, and this is, I think, an American habit as well. It's hard. I've got to modify it so it's easier for me. And it's something I'll talk about more in my upcoming Get Buff 5 book that'll come out hopefully in the next few months. But
Oh,
I
nice.
don't like solve the problem. Don't avoid the problem because avoiding the problem is a problem. Like it's like you're taking the Humvee into battle. Oh, there's no armor plating. Let's just ignore that and keep driving the thing. No, maybe solve the problem. Put some armor plating in the thing. You know what I'm talking about. Like you've got to solve the
Right, right.
problem. because ignoring the problem is not going to help anybody.
Yeah, no, exactly, exactly. Yeah. So
So I
Get
appreciate.
Buff 5 is coming out?
Well, this is the first time I've talked about it publicly. And listen, I'm really loath to talk about things that haven't happened because it,
Yeah.
it can make me I don't need that pressure and it can make me look
Yeah.
silly. But I think so. But and it's not going to be what you'd expect it to be. It'll be pretty different. Um, yeah, and it'll cover a lot of things we've talked about today without going into detail as to
Yeah.
clarification because I've put a lot out there and it's almost too much information, as in I've put out so much that it's hard to piece together for some. So it'll
Hmm.
piece it together a little bit more clearly as it relates to the the bodybuilding genre. And when I say bodybuilding, I'm not talking about competitive bodybuilding, although it could be used for it. I'm talking about anybody who wants to use strength training for whatever purpose. And I'm
Hmm.
really big into. I'm not a closet bodybuilder, and I've got no time for closet bodybuilders. It's you probably ran long enough. In the 1980s, there was this ad in the muscular development or some American bodybuilding magazine where they dressed this half a dozen bodybuilders up into the kit from different sports. So one was dressed as a baseballer, one was dressed as basketball, and
Hmm.
they were just sending the message, hey, if you want to be successful with sport, you've got to get big muscles. And
Yep.
I spent my entire professional career contesting that. And, from the day Australian athletes embraced strength training, when I was the person who introduced strength training to more sports than anyone else in this country, and Americans had already embraced it, so we're a bit behind you. But it's been a battle. No, you don't need to do beach muscles. In fact, it's going to hurt you. We can talk about specific muscles and exercises that people still haven't got the message. And I'm going to give you one. Biceps. I'm trying to remember the first time I met someone with a bicep tear. It was like probably one person in the 1980s, and he was a bodybuilder turned powerlifter, and he tore it in a deadlift. Surprise, surprise.
Mhm.
Now, bicep tears, like everybody owns a bicep tear. Like, really? Anyway, um, getting buffed for the sake of getting buffed is not the answer. If you, for example, want to have a
Hmm.
military pursuit, if you want to have, if you have an occupational pursuit that's unique, get get the benefits that suit you. Don't do things that detract from you. And I
Right.
know they're not professionals, they're not expected to know, but I just want to take that moment because when I give the Get Buff book to an athlete of any sport, and because it's a good text, I have to say, listen, ignore the front cover. Do not get sucked in by the visuals. I don't care what you look like. I want you to look like a person who will succeed in that sport, not look like someone who succeed on the bodybuilding platform.
Hmm.
So, and the school board is going to tell us whether we're on track or not. Um, so yeah, I've got a major issue around that. Because I feel a bit responsible for triggering. Like we didn't have too many closet bodybuilders back in the day in terms of in sport. Like if an athlete goes into a sport, let's say I want to be a basketballer, but I'm more interested in what I look like in the mirror, I'm never going to fulfill my potential.
Right.
So I don't want to be part of the problem. I want to be part of the solution. So um, having said that, Get Bar 5 will be about the things, the behind, the why I developed what I did. And it'll talk about the battle I had. The first battle was to sell strength training, because in the 1980s, nobody did strength training in Australia in sport. And I mean literally. The second battle was, in particular, well, first we used to battle the East Germans when they were behind the wall on the podium. Like I worked with a girl who in 1980 came about, fourth or fifth off the top of my head. And the first two or three were from East Germany. We'll go figure. Um, but then the battle became more real after the German wall came down in '89 and after the Soviet Union collapsed. Because what did they do with their what did they do with their knowledge? They
Hmm.
dispersed, and that made more athletes in more sports be exposed to information, which means I had to keep work harder, get a better result with athletes. If we were to pass a drug test and still win, and we did, like we won against people who weren't being drug tested, and I know their country's history without going into
Hmm.
detail. So what I had to come up with in strength training was, and all forms of training, was pretty astute because I had a pretty big battle on my hands, and that's probably unique for me because I come from a majority of athletes I work with. I mean, overwhelming majority of athletes were drug free and in drug tested sports who are genuine, and Americans don't really understand that because your pro sports are your big sports, and I'm not sure if their drug
Sure.
testing is as transparent as the earlier days with the IOC. When I mean, I'm not saying IOC were completely clean, but I know Australian drug testing has always been good, and we can go on for that one forever. But yeah, that's a little bit about some of the thoughts. I think you'll enjoy it because there's so much more to write about and share.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was you that set the priority, and I see it, knowing all of the organizations, is set in the name. It's National Strength and Conditioning Association, not National Conditioning and Strength Association. They
Hmm.
say it in the name and they
Hmm.
tell you where the priority is. And then just like I never hear anybody talking about the point of diminishing returns. How strong do you have to be? Like just getting strong for the sake of getting strong, if you're not a weightlifter or a power lifter, I'm not clear on like what is your data to show me that because I have a 500-pound bench, I'm now a better athlete. I can now
Hmm.
hit the ball harder in baseball or I can throw. Show me. Show me your data to support or show me your athletes that's saying that they got better because now they're superhuman strong and they can compete in a powerlifting show. Show me.
Yes, yes.
And I don't see it. But
No,
for
well,
whatever reason, we
you can't.
put our blinders on. It's like we don't want to see it. Like, yeah, just get big and strong and it'll cure everything. Nah, I
So
don't think it works that way.
what happened in the 1990s is the start of the 1990s was the first time that strength training was becoming accepted in mainstream. And the strength researchers were happy. I mean, I've trained on the platform with some really good strength researchers out of America, and I really appreciate their contribution, et cetera, et cetera. But what the world did was in the 1990s, they had so much pent-up frustration leading up to that, people wouldn't accept the strength information, and then they started to. So they just overreacted. Everybody in America, in terms of the athlete approach, was let's do, the Olympic lifts and the power lifts, and just lift as much as we can. And now they're great lifts. Don't get me wrong, but the whole program is not about them, and it's not program is not about how heavy we can go. And that's all the 90s were. So I didn't intentionally push against that, but that was the environment that I walked into when I started saying, listen, over the last 20 years, these are the conclusions I've come to because I keep my eye on the trends, but I come, I row my own boat, so to speak. And that was why the clash was there because at the end of the 1990s, and our friend from the Northeast, I know the programs that he was doing, and they were
Mhm.
those programs where they had few exercises, lifting as much as they could, technique was irrelevant, and then come along to a seminar, got threatened, lashed out, and then a few years later publishing a book about well, you should be doing these bodyweight exercises and speed of movement and all this. Anyway, you know the history, but um,
Yeah.
I understand why America was where it was because it was just wow, the world's accepted us at last. We're no longer those weird people in a dungeon down the bottom of the basement or at Muscle Beach in America, and there was just a it was like a coming of age of strength training, but it got out of context, as you said, because
Yeah.
there's only so much. Let's just put it this way. A lot of people have promoted the belief that you have to squat multiple times your body weight if you're going to be an elite athlete. Well, let me make it really clear. In the winter sports Olympics, overwhelming majority of athletes couldn't even squat their own body weight, and they don't need to. And now I'm
Hmm.
making a broad statement, but I'm making out a statement because I've worked with so many of them and I know who they are and what they can and can't do. And that statement is so misguided. And it's done by people who, even though they claim they were involved, didn't really understand or didn't, there's a lot of myths about strength training and exactly around, body weight. And the same thing was applied to plyometrics. So we can't do plyometrics until we can squat, X times our body weight. Anyway, I'm probably getting a little bit too specific, Joey.
I know the history and I totally understand. Yeah, it's funny. I even think about some of your like just to see all of the work with flexibility now, like it's just interesting out in the industry. Like I see so many places that never had anything at all other than a few arm circles, leg kicks, swing here and there, but no true just sit there in the moment and let the muscle lengthen. None of that. And now I'm starting to see it. Like how many years later? Like I mean, my shirt that was years ago when I got
Yes,
this, and we're
yes.
just starting to see it now touch mainstream where it's a recommended thing. They still don't understand it, but they've gotten at a place where it's not so I don't know what the word I'm looking for. It's not unsafe. Like it's okay to do that now. but they still don't understand it. But I guess it's a start. Maybe in 20 more years, they may have a better understanding of how to use it as a training tool as well. And it's not just something you do um, casually and nonchalant. Like it's a part of the program.
Well, if they're accepting it now, I can only conclude that they've worked out how to monetize it because what my proposal is it wasn't accepted because you couldn't monetize it. And American manufacturers don't want to see a picture of someone doing exercise without equipment in the hand. It's banned. It's like passing wind in church. You can't do it, and it's not going to happen. But what pisses me off is that for the 20 years that it was, between the switch was flicked in 1995. From 1995 onwards, there was this instant turn against, like it was just like bang, the world turned against stretching. And
Mhm.
the people who still believe that and don't stretch, like I, I travel the world still, and I meet athletes endlessly, and they're almost exclusively drinking the Kool-Aid from that
Mhm.
post 1995 era, and their bodies and their performance and their career length and their long-term health are all impacted because some idiot came out and on behalf of the manufacturers made virtue signaling statements like my athletes don't stretch because if they did, it'd be like a rubber band. It would snap and break. Or this one, I don't see lions in the jungle stretching. They don't do static stretching. So why would an athlete need to do static stretching? And I've just given you two quotes from people who've written high
Yeah.
profile books and have damaged the world. Are they ever going to stand up and, well, one can't, but the other can still stand, and say, I was a fuckwit. I told
Right.
bullshit, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to that entire generation. When I grew up, the saying was if you swim straight after eating, you'll get a cramp and you'll drown. So nobody went swimming straight after eating because they were going to cramp and die. Well,
Right.
the
Right.
stretching is the same thing. You can't stretch, and static stretching is definitely not happening, and you can't stretch beforehand unless it's dynamic, which isn't even stretching. So I don't mind people have a different opinion. But
Yeah.
what I don't like is that if you're going to go and damage the world because you've got no fucking idea, but someone's paying you to do a seminar series around America, then have the balls 20 years later say, listen, I fucked up. I was a dickhead. I told the world the wrong thing. But I don't think that it's not going to happen because I don't think they ever teach from a
Yeah.
internally learnt conclusion. They don't teach from what some of the world's historically leading thinkers have said is I jettisoned everything I was led to believe and operated only on the basis of personal experiences. They're never going to do
Mhm.
that because they're trend spotters. They want to be at the front of a
Right.
trend because that's the only way they're going to get popular and money because they just got to stay in front of trend. And I'm going to pick up their book 10 years later and they've changed their mind. I pick up their book 10 years later and they've changed their mind. And they say, well, it's okay to change your mind. Well, come on, really? That
Yeah.
much?
Yeah. That's a drastic shift and still not an understanding because I guess to me it's the arrogance not to say I was wrong, the arrogance not to go to the source and make me get a better understanding of what you're trying to present. Because again, that's how I found you. Like I saw what Polikin did, but then when I saw he put you in the credits, and I'm just like. Let me go talk to this guy. I want to see what he really meant. And even though I thought in that article Polikin didn't do a bad job, he still missed some things. And when I learned directly from you, that's why it's so important. We can say this over and over and over again that history matters because intent is everything in training. We can see people doing the same exercises and getting a totally different outcome because of intent. And that's why this is so important. So when he changed his stance and started foam rolling and stretching, he's still not getting it. At least he changed his stance. And when you tell me that a grown man says I don't do the squats anymore. I only do one-legged squats. Yeah, brother. Yeah, okay. Yeah. You're telling me your personal preference. You're not telling me what's best for your athlete or the people you're training. And that's not okay. Like I may not like a one-legged squat or a squat, but that doesn't mean for my athlete or client that it's not suitable for them. Like you're telling me some bullshit, and I think that people lost that. And that was one of the things that you taught. I can't remember what course. I took so many things with you. I can't remember what course where we talked about the bullshit about how it's not about your opinions on something. It's about the need for that person. That's more
Absolutely.
important. Like it's not about us, it's about them. And I don't think that is relayed a lot. I think a lot of the trendsetters are training things based on their personal preference. and their comfort in teaching. They don't want to go outside of their comfort zone
Hmm.
in having to learn something specifically for that person and say, like, I may not be the best, is my understanding of this, and I'm going to work through it with you to make you better. So, but you always had we're going to communicate. This is the process. Like, I'm not going to
Absolutely.
say, hey, Ian, you're doing this. I'm going to say, Ian, we are doing this, and it's going to be a conversation. And, we're going to go back and forth to get you to where you want to go. And that's not his method. His method is, I am all knowing. I know more than you. I'm smarter than you. Follow me. I will take you to greatness because I am so great. Just do what I say. Don't ask any questions. Don't challenge me. And we know that bullshit doesn't work. And I think just because you have people, despite of you, are still successful, that doesn't mean it was because of you. And I
Yes.
think baby trainers don't understand that when they see the big names getting success, they don't recognize that. I always watch the people that take credit for other people's success. That tells me everything I need to know about them is because that person did the work. And more than likely, a lot of times I've seen it wasn't because of your program. They
Hmm.
just have God-given talent. It was
Hmm.
in spite
Absolutely.
of your program. And I
Hmm.
think that's something baby trainers and even older trainers miss. And they give far too much credit to these trendsetters and they follow all of their bullshit, not knowing you're not making your client or your athlete better. All you're doing is you're more than likely you're imposing more demands on them. You may be the reason for their next injury or their performance could probably be better if you worked with the athlete and you had that conversation and it was a communication as opposed to um, I'm gonna tell you, just do what I say. So
Absolutely. And one of my favorite pieces of bullshit is, as a trainer, we know 80% of the program design. We just need to get the other 20% from the person. What a load of shit. I don't know anything about what I'm going to do. I've got to go in with a totally open mind. As you said, we might be standing on one leg for 10 minutes. We might be doing one leg squat. We might be doing a squat. I don't know. I don't know what's best for them. The simplicity of behind the next bad, behind the next press or pulls bad. Well, no, exercises aren't bad. What's appropriate for the person? So
hmm.
I'm glad you haven't missed that point because when trends change, all it means is the dogma changes. It doesn't mean we got smarter.
Hmm.
We're just running with a different dogma. And
Hmm.
and what I taught about quad dominant, hip dominant, and the word hip dominant didn't exist beforehand, um, is that the exercises might be different than they used to, but they've still got the same imbalances they had. We've just changed the names of the exercise or how the exercise is done, but we've still got the same problem, along with a few other problems. But the world's not full of people who, like yourself, Joe, who I believe put the interests of the person first. I, I don't I don't need to have a credit. I just need to know that I've helped people be better than they were and have seen the evidence to confirm why I'm being fairly confident about the conclude some of the general guidelines I've reached and that I've trained a lot of athletes don't play the numbers game, but obviously to come to the conclusion I've reached, and I still process more athletes than the people appreciate, even though I try not to. It's not about who you train. And in America, for example, to graduate from an American college, you've probably got an incredible genetic gift to make you tough enough, not psychologically just, but you've got physical qualities that allow you to survive despite. Because those that can't survive don't play sport after college. And even in the American football program, I'd estimate 50% of the boys don't play sport after college because they physically can't. So there's a lot of boys broken along the way. And I talk about this eggs against the wall, which is a Eastern European saying where they acknowledge that, listen, we got a big pool, we throw them against the wall. If you don't break, you're a champion, and I'll work with you. But in a world that is a little bit more humanitarian, in a world where we consider human rights, we can't take that approach. Every one of those children is someone's daughter, someone's son. And it's not good enough to break them and say, well, sorry, you just weren't a tough enough egg, you broke. So yeah, and I see it so many times in sport. You might get a swimming coach the athletes who are on the way to get Olympics that they tend to be attracted towards and say every one of their athletes is an Olympian. But if they got 100 kids at the age of 4, what would be their conversion rate? That would be a different
Hmm.
story.
Hmm.
So your conversion rate matters, not how many people you put on that survived. To your point, but there aren't too many people that realistically get the opportunity to take them from that. You know, I probably had my biggest cohort from post high school in the late 80s through to the late 90s, and say in Australian rugby. I looked after just about every talent identified rugby player coming out of high school. So I had a pretty big cohort for a long, long period of time. So I could fairly conclusively say that during that period of time we won 2 World Cups and we won, I think, was it 3 super titles, 4 super titles, anyway, something like that. With the bodies that I developed over that 10 to 15 year period, there might have been a connection to it, but you don't often get that opportunity in a communist environment and a state controlled sport environment, yes, but not in the Western world. But that aside, you still don't jump to conclusions about names dropping, which I hopefully have been able to avoid for the last 45 years.
Yes, you've it's been funny to watch because I even know like people who have like hijacked some of your stuff and then try to throw names around like they did something, which I thought was interesting. And I still see some of the remnants of those people, and it's just like history matters. And I said, I'm sorry I'm that way, but because I know I will throw the baby out with the bathwater. I just can't follow it. Like they can have something that's really, really good, but I know the history. So I just can't I can't do it. And I see it popping up on different things like, oh yeah, I know them. I said, yeah, I'm not interested. Like I said, that class that was offered to me, it was over $1,000, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and take the zero. I'm gonna pass because I know the history and I know that, like you're trying to take something that you said was bad and you're not giving full credit. And if you wouldn't give full credit, it's important because you would give full credit. That means that you took the time to meet with that person, learn from the creator, and you have an understanding of it. As opposed to, I looked at what that person did, and because I looked at it, I'm so smart, I understand it now, and I'm going to go out and do it. And I'm going to tell you, I see the work, they don't understand it still to this day. But
And that's like an echo to me. That's exactly how I feel when I see my work bastardized, diluted, and the power of the message is lost. And the other thing that I see in common with you is I find myself saying to the athletes and of coaches, if you knew what I knew, you might have a different opinion. It's almost like a curse because it's hard to unsee stuff, and especially if you have a moral compass. If you know the history and you know that it's not right and it's not good for the person, it's hard to endorse it. And sometimes you might come across like, you're being uncooperative or you're being, whatever. But I just say to people, hey, listen, if you knew what I knew, you might not go
yeah.
there. And I don't. I'm rarely motivated to say much more than that, but I am obliged to at least say that because at the end of the day, I don't care which cup you drink from. I don't care which trough you get your water from. I just want you to have the best outcomes possible. It doesn't have to have anything to do with me. I just want to know that when I put my head at the pillow at the end of the night, I've done the right thing by you, and I'm going to watch you for the rest of your career, for the rest of your life, and I'm going to reward you and credit you for the success you've had in sport, and I'm going to learn from it or otherwise. So I had on a slightly different note, in the last 2 weeks, I spent a bit of time with a boy who 34 years ago I haven't met for 34 years, but he had a knee injury at the time and rehabbed, and I wasn't part of the rehab, and I felt terrible about that. So I was trying to make up for that. And then the other boy I was in, when I say boy, obviously, I met 35 years ago, and he just had a double knee replacement, ex-military. So I can't take full responsibility for the knee damage, if you know what I'm saying. But
Hmm. Hmm.
I still, I still want to understand how and why we got to that point. So um, I know my message is powerful. I know what it can do, but at the same time, we're continually learning, and I've got a 45-year professional time span now, and I want to know what I can tell you now. If I train someone in 1980, what's it done to their body in part? Because obviously I'm not the only stimulus. what it did to them 45 years later. And that is really important feedback. So I monitor the physical condition of the athletes I work with for their entire life. As you know, I call it the cradle to grave approach, where I want to know the earlier we get involved, the better. And the longer I watch you for, the longer we train for, the better. But the longer I watch you for, the more I'll learn. So there's a lot more lessons to come out based upon, and as you said, you're learning more when you're learning to pull back or be more careful because you've learned. If I did this and this happened, I'm the same. People say, "Have you changed much?" I say, "Well, I've only changed in that I've had a longer time frame to understand it, and I'm more clear about my message." Like the quad hip thing, I was pretty clear about it in the late 90s, but even more clear about it now because I've had another
Hmm.
20, 30 years on that to learn. But anyway, Joe, I talk too much. I could talk forever on.
No, no, I really appreciate it. It was so great catching up. Like when you put that out, I thought I missed it because I didn't see any information to sign up. When you came back, I'm like, hell yeah, I'm gonna take you up on it. Like,
Well, I don't try too hard to convince people, but having said that, there are people I do want to talk to. So when they don't put their hand up, I say, well, maybe he didn't quite get the memo. So I'm going to put it
yeah.
out there again. So I really appreciate you putting up there. I want to wrap with you giving me some culture. Give me your Marine call, your standard Marine call, and so I'm just trying to write because I like to respect culture, and I don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah. Aura.
Hoorah. Okay, so that's very
Yeah.
excellent. And I appreciate that, Joe. And obviously, as everyone says, appreciate your service. Obviously, the American military is in the spotlight again,
Hmm.
and probably will be for a time period moving forward because of the cycle of the world that we're going through. So I know
Yeah.
you'd be watching that as well. It's especially I won't go into detail, but yeah, we're
Yeah.
all appreciative of people who serve, and you're continuing to serve both in law enforcement and in physical training. So the world appreciates you, Joey, and I appreciate you because you are sharing my message because I can't change the world by myself. In fact, there's been more pushback on what I've taught and then taught inappropriately. Like I've actually triggered
Hmm.
more damage than good, and,
Hmm.
and therefore I need more people like you to help write the message, or share the message, and then correct the message because unfortunately the world is literally doing shit because it was a knee-jerk reaction to counter what I had said.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate, Joe, that you've been consistent, you've been steadfast, and your intentions are, what I define as that the intentions are good, and I do anything to help you continue on with what you're doing. So, you need anything, you know where I am.
I do. I still send people your way. I have a couple of kids who want to train, and I was laughing. I said they were telling me what they were doing. I said, "Go to Ian and tell him I sent you." I said
Really
he'll
good
have
on you.
stories. I said so.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Referrals are so important. I mean, I just was on doing referrals even early this morning, using some of my American contacts to look after American athlete in a unique sport. So referrals, it's really good to have referrals when you're sending it to someone you can trust. So um,
Yeah.
I appreciate that, and we all appreciate those referrals. Oh,
Yes, sir.
all right, Joe. If there's anyone else with a question for Joe before we wrap, I know I've got a few people on the line. Joe and I have been shooting the breeze for about an hour and dominated the conversation.
Just a comment, Joey. Appreciate you coming on and give us in your history. We've heard a lot of it from Ian history, which is we really appreciate. But coming from your perspective, it means a lot. It really balances out, makes it more real for us. So thanks for your input and just some of your reflections on the his what he does, like doing the exercise with the right intention. You've got great insight into the program, so I appreciate hearing it from you. Thank you.
Happy to share. Happy.
And Don's input is pretty valuable. Don just spent last week, I think it was with me, 7 days he spent with me, and we went hard. We processed in excess of 150 athletes off the top of my head, and we got down and dirty for the good of the athlete. And he really again, not for the first time, but he tasted that again, and we put smiles on a lot of athletes' faces. So I appreciate again Don being on the call with us. Anyone else with a question for young Joey before we wrap?
Oh, very, very quickly. Look, thank you both. It's been really, really great to be a fly on the wall and listen to you both talking. But Joey, question for you. You've known him for a long time. Has he changed at all?
No, no, not one bit. from day one. The thing I know about Ian, he is always like you ask him for something, he will give you way more than what you would expect, and it's consistent. It has not changed. I'm not anybody famous. I'm just some dude who read an article, reached out, and the next thing you know, I'm talking to him on the phone, and he called me. Like I didn't, and I thought it was a prank at first because I'm just like, I understand the accent, and he identified who he was. I'm just like. Okay, and it's been like that ever since. I had him come out to California a couple of times. I mean, it's been literally since early 2000s. Well, we started making contact in the 90s when I was in Louisiana, and then when I came to
Hmm.
California, we didn't lose contact. I brought him out to California, and we just kept. I hosted him. Like nothing has changed. Like none of his methods. I've not seen anything different because they work. It's been consistent. But what I have seen is the world around us change. Like
Hmm.
people who early on was like, oh, that stuff doesn't work. That's crazy. You are nuts. Why are you following this guy? And now I see more and more publications with his methods because I've been around so long and I have every single thing the guy published. I can recognize it like, oh, I know where that came from. And I can also recognize that it's when we said what Donald had said, the intent. I can see that the intention of what they're doing is wrong because they probably looked at it, but they didn't take the time to learn it from the source to understand what the intent is behind methods, like either stretching, using foam rollers for recovery. Um, Control drills has just been bastardized. They look horrible when I see them. And then someone like I saw somebody demonstrate a king deadlift, and I'm just like, uh, yeah, I don't think I would call it that. That's not. But he's been exactly the same. No change.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, appreciate that. And Joe, as soon as I learned he was a brother in arms, I reached out straight away. So I can't do that with everybody, but that's the more important. It's a more important person to support than anybody else in the world. Due to our some of our shared backgrounds. So that's a bit of background. But I appreciate the question.
And thank Joey for coming on to share this. And it's really something when Ian sharing it with us versus someone like yourself who has been watching him doing his stuff for all these years. So always awesome to see someone like you having such a high moral compass and just delivering the same message as well. So thank you for that. Appreciate.
Thank you.
And I just want to comment on that. I find military and police, um, generally speaking, a far more higher moral compass because when you go to battle, and whether it's in the streets of your hometown or whether you're on someone else's land, you got to do right and you got to do right by each other. And there's no room for this self-centered bullshit that we see in civilian life. And I'm not surprised at all. Joey's a good example of what you'd expect. Obviously, I think post 2000, I think there's been some things happening in the military, where, especially in special forces, which I suggest that maybe we've lost our way a little bit in terms of what it used to be. Like, if you're going to do this, no one will ever know where you went, what you did, or who you are. And now it's how quickly can I get to Hollywood. But I'm talking about an earlier. And I've sat with you know black ops operators who were operating in the 60s, and I know the humility. Um, so yeah, it's a pleasure working with people who understand what it's like to. There's no smoke and mirrors when you've got the back to the wall with humans. There is just no smoke and mirrors with them. You've got to be completely transparent, and you've got to have their best interests in heart. I want the best from you, and I'll give you my best. And we're not going to bullshit to each other because our lives depend on it, and the lives of other people depend upon it. And we're here to do something that will not work properly in that. So that's what I value about, as I said, my brother is in arms like Joey. Anyone else with a question? But I appreciate everyone's contribution so far. Well, Joey, it's been phenomenal to catch up. It's been too long between drinks, but the good news is we have spent a bit of time together um,
Mhm.
in the last 26, 7 years.
Yeah.
And we've exchanged as well. And not only, in addition to spending time, we've had good communications. And you've got some legacies on the wall I can see in your bookshelf, and you've still
Mhm.
still wearing the shirts. It's been a pleasure. I look forward to when we can do it again, Joey. So stay safe.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian. I appreciate it.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.